The silk sheets rustled in the darkness as Kong Minho's voice broke through the night, raw and desperate in a way that would have shocked anyone who knew him as Seoul's most feared underworld king. "Please," he whispered against her skin, his hands trembling as they traced her curves. "Just one more round." His wife smiled, breathless and flushed, while neither of them noticed the shadow frozen outside their bedroom door. Zuri, the new housemaid from Kenya, her hand still raised to knock, her heart hammering as she realized what she'd stumbled upon, and something dangerous stirring inside her chest at the vulnerability in that powerful man's voice. "Welcome, besties. Please like, share, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from." Zuri had arrived at the Kong estate 3 weeks earlier, desperate for work after her student visa expired and her savings ran dry. The massive compound in Gangnam stood behind iron gates and security cameras, a fortress that whispered of wealth and danger in equal measure. She'd been hired through an agency that asked no questions about immigration status, paid cash, and promised discretion. The job was simple: clean, stay invisible, speak only when spoken to. What they hadn't told her was that the man who owned this fortress was Seoul's most notorious crime lord, or that his wife was the most beautiful woman Zuri had ever seen. Mrs. Kong, Yuna, though Zuri had only heard the name whispered by other staff, moved through the house like sunlight, warm and golden and completely unaware of her own radiance. She was Korean-American, raised in California, with an easy smile and kind eyes that made Zuri's chest ache with something she couldn't name. Yuna treated the staff like human beings, remembered their names, asked about their families. She was everything good in a house that breathed darkness. And then there was him. Kong Min-ho ruled his empire with calculated brutality, his reputation built on fear and respect. Men crossed the street to avoid him. Business rivals disappeared. Politicians took his calls at 3 in the morning. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face carved into sharp angles that would have made him handsome if not for the coldness in his dark eyes. He wore custom suits that cost more than Zuri's entire year of university tuition, and he moved through his home like a predator always calculating the next kill. But Zuri had started noticing the cracks in that icy exterior. The way Minho's face softened when Yuna entered a room. How his eyes tracked her constantly, as if he needed to confirm her presence. The gentle way he touched the small of her back when guiding her through doorways. How he'd cancel meetings if she had a headache, postpone business trips if she seemed lonely. The man who made grown criminals weep became someone entirely different in his wife's presence. Devoted, protective, almost worshipful. Zuri tried not to notice. Tried not to feel the strange pull in her chest when she cleaned their bedroom, when she saw the photos of them on their wedding day, when she overheard fragments of their conversations. She was just the maid. Invisible. Temporary. That night changed everything. She'd been bringing fresh towels to the master suite, the house quiet except for the distant hum of security monitors. The other staff had retired to their quarters. Zuri had knocked softly, heard nothing, assumed the couple was out or asleep. She'd turned the doorknob, pushed the door open a crack, and froze. The bedroom was dim, lit only by moonlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. On the massive bed, tangled in silk sheets, Minho knelt over his wife with a desperation that stole Zuri's breath. His shirt was unbuttoned and hanging off his shoulders. Yuna lay beneath him, her hair spread across the pillows like dark water, her skin flushed and glowing. "Please," Minho whispered, and his voice broke on the word. "Just one more round. I need you. I need." His hands trembled as they traced his wife's curves, reverent and hungry. "I can't get enough of you. I'll never get enough." Yuna laughed softly, breathlessly, her fingers threading through his hair. "You're insatiable. We've already." "I don't care." He cut her off with a kiss that was somehow both tender and consuming. "I'll beg if that's what you want. I'll do anything. Just let me." Zuri should have closed the door. Should have backed away silently. Should have pretended she'd never seen Seoul's most dangerous man reduced to desperate pleading by his wife's touch. Instead, she stood frozen, her heart hammering, her hands clutching the towels so tightly her knuckles went white. She'd never seen anything like this. The raw need in Minho's voice, the way he touched Yuna like she was both salvation and destruction. The vulnerability he showed only to her, the way he became someone else entirely in the sanctuary of their bedroom. It was intimate and terrifying and achingly beautiful, and Zuri felt something crack open inside her chest, something dangerous and unwanted and completely inappropriate. She finally found the strength to move. She pulled the door closed as quietly as possible, her hands shaking, and practically ran back to her quarters. The towels fell forgotten on the hallway floor. That night, alone in her small room above the garage, Zuri couldn't stop thinking about what she'd witnessed. Not the physical intimacy itself, though that had been overwhelming enough, but the emotion behind it. The desperation. The devotion. The way Min-ho had begged his wife for closeness, like he'd die without it. Zuri had never experienced anything like that. Had never been touched with that kind of reverence. Had never heard a man's voice break with need for her. She was 25 years old, had left Kenya to pursue her master's degree in international relations, and had carefully built walls around her heart after watching her mother suffer through 3 failed marriages. She'd convinced herself that love was a lie, that passion was temporary, that smart women didn't lose themselves in desire. But she'd heard the truth in Min-ho's voice. Had seen the way he worshipped his wife with his hands and his words and his desperate pleading. And something inside her cracked wide open, leaving her aching for something she'd never believed existed. The next morning, Zuri avoided the master suite. She focused on cleaning the guest rooms, the library, the kitchen, anywhere that kept her far from the couple. But the house had a way of forcing proximity. She was polishing the marble staircase when Yuna appeared, dressed in casual jeans and a soft sweater, her hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked radiant and well-loved, a slight flush still coloring her cheeks. "Good morning, Zuri," Yuna said warmly. "Did you sleep well?" Zuri's hands tightened on the cloth. "Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Please call me Yuna." She smiled. "I've told you that a dozen times now." "Yes, Ma, Yuna." Zuri forced herself to meet the other woman's eyes, guilt crawling up her throat. She'd witnessed something profoundly private. She'd seen this kind woman in a vulnerable moment. She felt like a thief. Yuna studied her for a moment, concern crossing her face. "Are you feeling all right? You look pale." "I'm fine. Just tired." "You work too hard. You should take breaks." Yuna touched Zuri's arm gently. "Min-ho, and I don't expect you to kill yourself for this job. We're not slave drivers, despite what the tabloids say about my husband." Zuri managed a weak smile. "I appreciate that." Later that afternoon, Min-ho himself appeared in the kitchen where Zuri was preparing tea. She hadn't heard him enter. The man moved like a ghost despite his size. When she turned and found him standing there, her heart stopped. He looked different in daylight. Still dangerous, still powerful, but there was a softness around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Or maybe Zuri was just noticing it now, seeing him through the lens of what she'd witnessed. "The staff room needs cleaning," he said, his voice flat and businesslike. The previous Maid left it in poor condition. "Yes, sir. I'll take care of it today." He nodded once and started to leave, then paused. "And Zuri." Her name on his lips made her stomach flip. "Yes, sir? If you ever need anything, time off, medical care, help with immigration paperwork, you tell Mrs. Kong. She handles staff welfare." His expression didn't change, but something in his tone suggested he knew more about her situation than he should. "I take care of what's mine. That includes the people who work for my wife." He left before she could respond, leaving Zuri staring after him with confusion and something uncomfortably close to warmth spreading through her chest. Over the following days, Zuri became hyper-aware of the couple's presence. She noticed the way Min-ho's hand would find Yuna's even when they walked from room to room. How he'd pull her chair out at dinner. How his eyes would track her across the room during business calls. How he'd interrupt meetings if she texted him. How he'd send his driver to pick her up from her art classes, even though she had her own car. The obsession was quiet but absolute. Min-ho orbited his wife like she was the sun, and he'd freeze without her warmth. And Zuri noticed other things too. The way visitors would arrive late at night. Dangerous-looking men with hard eyes and expensive suits. How Min-ho's office was soundproofed and always locked. How certain phone calls would make his expression go ice cold. How blood sometimes stained his shirt cuffs when he came home from business meetings. The darkness was real. The danger was real. But so was the love. A week after the incident, Zuri was cleaning the upstairs hallway when she heard voices raised in Minho's office. The door was slightly ajar, and though she knew she shouldn't listen, something made her pause. She's becoming a liability. A man's voice, speaking Korean. Zuri had picked up enough of the language to follow basic conversations. The prosecutor is building a case. Your wife is a weak point. Watch your mouth. Minho's voice dropped to something lethal. My wife is off limits. I'm trying to protect you. If they can't touch you directly, they'll go after her. They'll threaten her, hurt her, use her against you. She's your only weakness. Then I'll make sure no one can touch her.
How?
By keeping her locked in this house. She goes to art classes, has lunch with friends, shops in Gangnam. Every time she leaves, she's vulnerable. I have security on her. 8 men, rotating shifts. It's not enough. 1 well-placed sniper, 1 car accident, 1 poison drink. The sound of something shattering cut off the conversation. When Minho spoke again, his voice was barely human. If anyone touches her, I will burn this city to the ground. I will kill their families, destroy their businesses, and make them beg for death. Do you understand me? Silence. I asked if you understand. Yes, sir. Now get out. Zuri barely managed to scramble away before Minho's associate emerged from the office, his face pale. She pretended to be engrossed in dusting a painting, her heart racing. She hadn't fully understood the danger before. Hadn't grasped that Yuna's life was constantly at risk simply because she'd married a man like Minho. The love between them was real and powerful and devastating, but it came with a price that made Zuri's chest ache. That evening, she was setting the dining table when Yuna appeared, looking troubled. Zuri, can I ask you something? Of course. Yuna hesitated, then said quietly, Do you think I'm naive? The question caught Zuri off guard.
What?
No, of course not. I know what people think. That I'm the innocent wife who doesn't understand what her husband does. That I'm blind to the violence and the danger. Yuna's hands twisted together. But I'm not stupid. I know exactly who Minho is. I know what he's capable of. Zuri didn't know what to say. I grew up in California, Yuna continued. I had a normal life. Normal friends. I was studying art history at UCLA when I met him. He came to give a guest lecture on Korean business practices. It was a cover, of course, but I didn't know that then. She smiled sadly. He was so different from anyone I'd ever met. Intense. Focused. He looked at me like I was the only person in the room. How did you find out about his real work? He told me. After 6 months of dating, he sat me down and explained everything. Told me exactly what he did, who he was, what being with him would mean. He gave me a choice, walk away safely, or stay and accept the consequences. And you stayed. I stayed. Yuna met Zuri's eyes. Because I'd never felt anything like what I felt with him. He made me feel seen, cherished, protected. He'd burn the world down for me, and I know that sounds crazy, but it's true. I've never doubted his love for a single second. Zuri's throat tightened. That's rare. It is. Yuna smiled. Sometimes I wonder if it's selfish. If loving him makes me complicit in everything he does. But then he looks at me the way he looked at me this morning. Like I'm his entire world, and I can't bring myself to regret it. The confession hung between them, raw and honest. I don't think you're naive, Zuri said quietly. I think you're brave. And I think he's very lucky. Yuna squeezed her hand. Thank you. That night, Zuri lay in bed thinking about love and choice, and the impossible situations people found themselves in. She thought about her mother's failed marriages, about her own careful walls, about the way Minho's voice had broken when he'd begged his wife for closeness. She was starting to understand that love wasn't safe or simple. That real love was complicated and dangerous, and worth fighting for anyway. The following week, Zuri witnessed another private moment. Though this time, it was deliberate. She'd been cleaning the conservatory, surrounded by Yuna's paintings and the lush plants that filled the glass-enclosed space. It was Zuri's favorite room in the house, peaceful and beautiful. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear anyone enter. It's beautiful. Minho's voice made her jump. He stood in the doorway, looking at one of Yuna's paintings, an abstract piece in blues and golds that somehow captured both chaos and serenity. Yes, sir. Your wife is very talented. She is. He moved closer to the painting, his expression softening in that way Zuri had learned to recognize. She painted this one after we got married. She said it represented how I made her feel, overwhelmed and safe at the same time. Zuri wasn't sure what to say to that. Minho turned to look at her, and his gaze was assessing. You've been here almost a month now. Yes, sir. Are you being treated well? Very well. Everyone has been kind. Good. He paused. My wife likes you. She says you're genuine, that you don't look at her with judgment or pity like so many others do. I would never. I know. That's why you're still here. His tone wasn't threatening, just matter of fact. I'm very protective of my wife, Zuri. I don't let people near her unless I trust them completely. The fact that you're alone with her regularly means I've decided you're trustworthy. The weight of that statement settled over Zuri like a blanket. She was being trusted by a man who trusted no one, and that trust came with unspoken expectations. I would never hurt her, Zuri said quietly. She's been nothing but kind to me. I believe you. Minho moved toward the door, then paused. And Zuri, if you ever see or hear anything that concerns you, anything that might put my wife at risk, you come to me immediately. Not security. Not the house manager. Me. Yes, sir. He left, and Zuri stood alone in the conservatory, her hands trembling slightly. She'd just been recruited as an informal guardian, drawn into the web of protection Minho had woven around his wife. She should have been frightened, should have recognized the danger of getting involved. Instead, she felt oddly honored. 2 weeks later, the danger became real. Zuri was at the market in Gangnam, picking up specialty ingredients Yuna had requested for a dinner party. She'd been given a security escort, a quiet man named Han who stayed 10 feet back but never lost sight of her. It was a beautiful autumn afternoon, the streets busy with shoppers and tourists. She was examining imported spices when she noticed a man watching her. Not casually, deliberately. He was Korean, well-dressed, with eyes that reminded her of Minho. Cold. Calculating. Zuri's instinct screamed danger. She caught Han's eye and saw that he'd noticed the man too. His hand moved to his jacket, where she knew he kept a weapon. The man approached slowly, a smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. You work for Kong Minho, he said in English. Not a question. Zuri didn't respond. I have a message for your employer. Tell him that his protection won't last forever. Tell him that everything he loves can be taken away. Tell him. Han moved between them, his body language screaming threat. He spoke in rapid Korean, his tone making it clear that the conversation was over. The man laughed and walked away, but not before giving Zuri one last look that made her skin crawl. Han immediately called someone, speaking urgently into his phone. Within minutes, 2 more security personnel appeared. They escorted Zuri back to the car with a level of intensity that made her realize how serious the threat was. When they arrived at the estate, Minho was already waiting. Yuna stood beside him, her face pale with worry. Are you hurt? Yuna immediately came to Zuri, checking her over like a mother hen. I'm fine. He just talked to me. What did he say? Minho's voice was deadly calm. Zuri repeated the message word for word. With each sentence, Minho's expression grew colder, more terrifying. By the time she finished, she could practically feel the violence radiating off him. Get inside, he told Yuna. Now. Minho. Now. He turned to Han. Double her security detail. She doesn't go anywhere without 6 men minimum. Who was he? Zuri asked, even though she knew she shouldn't. Minho looked at her, and for a moment, she saw past the crime lord to the frightened man beneath. Someone who wants to hurt me by hurting what I love most. The next few days were tense. Security around the estate tripled. Yuna was essentially confined to the house, though Minho tried to make it seem like a choice rather than a mandate. He canceled his business trips, worked from home, stayed close to his wife at all times. Zuri watched the way stress carved lines into his face. The way his hand would reach for Yuna constantly, needing to confirm her presence. The way he'd stand at the windows late at night, staring out at the grounds like he could personally fight off any threat through sheer will. And she watched the way Eunice soothed him, how she'd rest her hand on his chest when he got too tense, how she'd whisper things in his ear that made his shoulders relax, how she'd pull him into their bedroom and emerge an hour later with him looking more human, less like a man ready to commit murder. The love between them was the only thing keeping Minho from becoming a monster entirely. One evening, Zuri was bringing tea to the library when she overheard them talking. "I could leave," Eunice said quietly. "Go somewhere safe. Take the target off your back."
No.
Minho's response was immediate and absolute. "You're not leaving. You're not going anywhere without me. I'm causing you trouble. The organization is unstable because I don't care about the organization. I don't care about power or money or respect. I care about you. Only you." His voice cracked. "You're the only good thing in my life, Yuna. The only thing that makes me human. If I lose you, I lose everything that matters. You won't lose me. Promise me. Promise me you'll stay. I promise." The sound of kissing, of desperate touches, of two people clinging to each other against the darkness. Zuri backed away from the door, her eyes burning with tears she didn't understand. She'd witnessed something profoundly private again, something that reinforced the impossible nature of their love. They were choosing each other despite the danger, despite the risk, despite everything that should have driven them apart. It was beautiful and tragic and completely terrifying. Later that night, Zuri was in her room when she heard a noise outside her window. She went still, her heart racing. The room was on the second floor, overlooking the gardens. No one should be outside her window. She crept to the glass and peered out. A figure moved in the shadows below. A man, dressed in black, moving toward the main house with clear intent. Zuri didn't think. She grabbed her phone and ran barefoot through the halls, her feet silent on the marble floors. She had to warn them, had to stop whatever was about to happen. She burst into Minho's office without knocking, breathless and terrified. He was at his desk, reviewing documents. He looked up sharply, his hand moving to the weapon she now knew he always kept nearby. "There's someone outside," she gasped. "In the gardens." Moving toward the house. Minho was on his feet instantly, already dialing security. His face had gone cold, lethal. "Where's Yuna?" "I don't know. I came straight here." He barked orders into his phone in Korean, then turned to Zuri. "Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me or my wife." He was gone before she could respond, moving with a speed and purpose that reminded her exactly who he was. Zuri locked the door with shaking hands and pressed her ear against it, trying to hear what is happening. Footsteps. Shouting. A woman's scream. Not Yuna. Thank God. One of the other staff members. More shouting. Then a sound that made Zuri's blood run cold. Gunshots. 3 shots, sharp and precise, echoed through the estate. Zuri pressed herself against the locked office door, her heart hammering so violently she thought her ribs might crack. The house had gone silent after the gunfire, an awful, suffocating silence that felt worse than the chaos. Minutes crawled by like hours. She didn't know if she should stay hidden or run. Didn't know if Minho was alive or bleeding out somewhere in those beautiful gardens. Didn't know if Yuna was safe. Then footsteps approached the office. Heavy. Purposeful. A knock. "Zuri, it's me. Open the door." Minho's voice. She nearly sobbed with relief as she fumbled with the lock. The door swung open and he stood there, his white shirt splattered with blood, his face a mask of cold fury. But he was alive. Standing. Uninjured, as far as she could tell. "Are you hurt?" His eyes scanned her quickly, clinically. "No." "What happened?" "The gunshots." "Intruder. He's been dealt with." Minho's tone made it clear what dealt with meant. "Security is sweeping the grounds. I need you to go to Yuna. She's in our bedroom. Stay with her until I come for you both." "Is she?" "She's safe. Frightened, but safe." Something flickered across his face, vulnerability breaking through the ice. "Please. I need to know someone I trust is with her while I handle this." Zuri nodded and ran toward the master suite. The hallways were filled with security personnel now, armed men moving with military precision. She knocked on the bedroom door and called out, "Yuna, it's Suri. Minho sent me." The door cracked open. Yuna's face appeared, pale and tear-stained. "Oh, thank God. Come in quickly." Inside, Yuna immediately pulled Suri into a fierce hug. She was trembling, dressed in a silk robe, her hair disheveled. "I thought, when I heard the shots, I thought they'd killed him."
He's fine.
Completely unharmed. "You're sure? I just saw him. He sent me to stay with you." Yuna collapsed onto the bed, her hands covering her face. "This is my fault. This whole thing started because of me." "That's not true." "It is." Yuna's voice broke. "Minho's enemies know the only way to hurt him is through me. I'm his weakness. The man who came to the market, the intruder tonight, they're testing his defenses, looking for opportunities. I make him vulnerable." Suri sat beside her, unsure what to say. Everything Yuna said was true. Her very existence put Minho at risk. But Suri had also seen the way he looked at his wife, heard the desperation in his voice when he begged her not to leave. Yuna wasn't his weakness. She was his reason for everything. "He loves you," Suri said quietly. "That's not weakness. That's strength. Love that gets people killed isn't strength. But he won't let that happen. You should have seen his face just now. He'll protect you with everything he has." Yuna looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "I know. That's what terrifies me. He'll destroy himself to keep me safe. He'll sacrifice everything, his organization, his principles, his own life. And I can't stop him because I love him just as much." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them both. Suri had entered this house as a stranger, an outsider, someone just passing through. Now she was entangled in the intimate tragedy of two people whose love had become both salvation and curse. An hour later, Minho returned. He looked exhausted, the adrenaline crash evident in the way his shoulders slumped. But the moment his eyes found Yuna, he came alive again. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled his wife into his arms, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair. "I'm so sorry. I should've." "Don't." Yuna pulled back to look at him. "Don't apologize for something that isn't your fault. Everything is my fault. Every threat, every danger, every moment you're afraid. It's all because you married me. And I'd do it again." Yuna cupped his face. "Every single time, I'd choose you." Minho's eyes closed, and a single tear escaped. Suri watched this feared crime lord break down in his wife's arms, watched him become human in the sanctuary of her presence. It was the most intimate thing Suri had ever witnessed, and she felt like an intruder in her own skin. "I'll go," she said quietly, standing.
No.
Minho's voice stopped her.
Stay.
"I need to speak with both of you." Suri sat back down, confused. Minho straightened, wiping his face, rebuilding his armor. When he spoke again, his voice was steady and commanding. "The threat level has escalated. My rivals are making moves faster than anticipated. The intruder tonight was a message. They can reach us even here in our home." "What does that mean?" Yuna asked. "It means we need to make changes. Immediately." He looked at Suri. "I'm expanding your role. You're no longer just household staff. You're part of Yuna's personal security detail."
What?
"I'm not. I don't have training for that. You don't need combat training. You need to be her eyes and ears when I can't be there. You've already proven you're observant and loyal. You warned me tonight before my own security spotted the threat." His gaze intensified. "I trust you with the most important thing in my life. Will you accept this responsibility?" Suri's mind raced. This was insane. She was a graduate student turned a legal housekeeper, not a bodyguard. But she looked at Yuna's frightened face, thought about the man in the market, about the gunshots tonight, thought about how Yuna had been nothing but kind to her. "Yes," she heard herself say. "I'll do it." "Good. Your salary is tripled, effective immediately. You'll move to a room on this floor, closer to our suite." And Suri. Minho's expression softened slightly. "Thank you for caring about her." The next few weeks transformed Suri's life entirely. Her new room was beautiful, larger than her entire apartment in Seoul had been, with an ensuite bathroom and a view of the gardens. She was given a new phone with direct lines to Minho and his security team. Mrs. Park, the head of household, helped her adjust to the new responsibilities with surprising warmth. But the biggest change was her relationship with Yuna. They were together constantly now. Zuri accompanied her to art classes, to lunch with friends, to the gallery openings and charity events that filled Yuna's social calendar. They talked for hours about everything: art, family, dreams, fears. Yuna shared stories about growing up in California, about meeting Minho, about the surreal experience of falling in love with a man everyone else feared. And Zuri shared too, about leaving Kenya with such big dreams, about her mother's struggles with love and money, about feeling lost in soul, invisible and alone, until she'd stumbled into this strange household that had become something like home. "I'm glad you're here," Yuna said one afternoon as they browsed an art supply store in Itaewon. Security surrounded them discreetly, but Yuna had insisted on this outing. "Not just because Minho feels better with you around, because I do too. You feel like a real friend." Zuri's chest tightened. "You are. My friend, I mean."
Good.
"Because I don't have many of those. Most people are too intimidated by Minho to get close to me." They were interrupted by Zuri's phone buzzing. Minho, checking in for the third time that hour. She answered and confirmed their location, their timeline, their security status. When she hung up, Yuna was smiling. "He trusts you," Yuna said. "Completely. That's rare for him." "I take it seriously." "I know. That's why he trusts you." But Zuri's new role came with uncomfortable realizations. Being so close to the couple meant witnessing their intimacy constantly. The way Minho's hand would slide to Yuna's waist in elevators. How he'd kiss her temple while reading documents. How his eyes would track her across rooms with an intensity that made Zuri's stomach flip. How he'd cancel important meetings if Yuna wanted him home for dinner. And at night, when Zuri's room was just down the hall from theirs, she'd sometimes hear them. Not just the physical intimacy, though she definitely heard that, the desperate whispers and breathless pleas that made her face burn, but the emotional intimacy too. The late-night conversations. The laughter. The way Minho's voice would soften to something unrecognizable when he was alone with his wife. Zuri tried not to listen. Tried to give them privacy. But sound carried in the mansion, and her heart had developed an annoying habit of racing whenever she heard Minho's voice drop to that particular register of need. She told herself it was just proximity, just the natural result of being surrounded by their love story. She wasn't attracted to Minho. That would be absurd, inappropriate, dangerous. She was just affected by witnessing something so intense and real. But late at night, alone in her beautiful room, Zuri would remember the first time she'd heard him beg. Just one more round. Please. And something in her chest would ache with longing for something she'd never experienced, something she'd convinced herself didn't exist until she'd seen it with her own eyes. A month after becoming part of Yuna's security detail, Zuri found herself in a situation that tested every boundary she'd tried to maintain. It was late afternoon, and Yuna had gone to visit her mother in California for a week, a trip Minho had initially refused to allow until Yuna had threatened to go anyway. He'd finally relented, but only after arranging an excessive security detail and making Yuna promise to call him every few hours. The mansion felt empty without her. The staff moved quietly through their duties. Minho locked himself in his office, working obsessively, probably trying to distract himself from his wife's absence. Zuri was in the library, taking advantage of the quieter schedule to catch up on reading when Minho appeared. He looked terrible, exhausted, hollow-eyed, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled. His shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, and his hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it repeatedly. "Do you know where Yuna keeps her art supplies?" he asked without preamble. Zuri blinked. "The conservatory. There's a storage closet on the east wall." "Show me." It wasn't a request. Zuri led him to the conservatory, to the closet filled with paints, brushes, canvases. Minho stared at the supplies like they might hold answers to questions he couldn't articulate. "She said she wanted a specific blue paint," he said quietly, "for a new piece she's planning. I thought if I ordered it, had it waiting when she got back." He stopped, his jaw clenching. "It's stupid." "It's not stupid. It's thoughtful. I can't function without her here." The confession came out raw, unfiltered. I can't sleep. I can't focus. Everything feels wrong when she's not close. He turned to look at Zuri, and the vulnerability in his eyes was staggering. Is that pathetic? That I'm this dependent on another person? Zuri's throat tightened. It's love. It's weakness. No, it's not. She surprised herself with her vehemence. I've watched you two for months now. The way you are with her, it's not weakness. It's the only time you're actually strong. The only time you're real. Minho studied her for a long moment. You understand us. More than most people who've known us for years. Maybe it's easier to see clearly from the outside. Or maybe you're more perceptive than you let on. He moved closer, and Zuri's heart rate spiked. Yuna talks about you constantly. She says you're trustworthy.
Kind.
That she feels safer with you around. I'm glad I can help. So am I. His hand reached out. Zuri thought he was going to touch her and panic flared, but he just retrieved a specific paint tube from behind her. Prussian blue. This one. This is what she wanted. He left the conservatory, leaving Zuri alone with her racing heart and the uncomfortable realization that she'd wanted him to touch her. For just a moment, standing close to him, smelling his cologne, feeling the heat radiating from his body, she'd wanted to know what it felt like to be the focus of that intensity. The guilt hit her like a wave. Yuna was her friend. Minho was devoted to his wife. And Zuri was developing feelings that could destroy everything. She avoided Minho for the next 3 days until Yuna returned. But on the 4th night, fate, or bad luck, intervened. Zuri woke around 2 in the morning to sounds coming from downstairs. Not threatening sounds. Just movement. Someone was awake. She should have stayed in bed, but concern pulled her from under the covers. What if something was wrong? She found Minho in the kitchen, standing at the counter in nothing but sleep pants, his torso bare and covered in scars she'd never seen before. He was drinking what looked like whiskey straight from the bottle. Sir? Zuri said quietly, not wanting to startle him. He turned, and even in the dim light, she could see the grief written across his face. Can't sleep, he said, his words slightly slurred. House is too quiet without her. She'll be back tomorrow. I know, but right now it's tonight, and she's not here. He took another drink. Do you know what it's like to be so dependent on someone that their absence feels like dying? Zuri moved closer, her instinct to comfort overriding her better judgment. You're not dying. You're just in love. Same thing. He laughed bitterly. I was fine before her. Functional. I ran my empire efficiently. Felt nothing. Then she walked into my life with that smile and those eyes, and suddenly I couldn't breathe without her. She made me human again, made me feel, and now I can't turn it off. Why would you want to? Because feeling this much is agony. He set down the bottle, his hands gripping the counter. Every moment she's out of my sight, I imagine 1,000 ways she could be hurt. Every threat against me becomes a threat against her. Every enemy sees her as my weakness. And they're right. She is my weakness. But she's also my strength. My only reason for existing. His voice cracked. How do I reconcile that? Zuri didn't have an answer. She just moved closer, drawn by the raw pain in his voice. Minho looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. You're a good person, Zuri. You shouldn't be here. Shouldn't be tangled up in my darkness. Maybe I choose to be here. Why? What could you possibly gain from involving yourself with someone like me? Because I've never seen love like yours, she wanted to say. Because watching you with Yuna showed me something I didn't think existed. Because I'm half in love with the idea of being loved the way you love her. But she couldn't say any of that. So instead, she said, because Yuna is my friend, and you make her happy. That's enough. Minho stared at her for a long moment, and Zuri became acutely aware of how close they were standing. How his bare chest rose and fell with each breath. How the kitchen lights cast shadows across his face that made him look almost vulnerable. I should go back to bed, Zuri said, her voice barely a whisper.
Yeah.
You should. But neither of them moved. The air between them felt charged, dangerous. Zuri knew she was playing with fire. Knew that even this moment of intimacy was a betrayal of Yuna's trust. Finally, Minho stepped back. Thank you. for checking on me, for caring. Of course. Zuri fled to her room, her heart hammering. She'd crossed a line tonight, not physically, but emotionally. She'd let herself get too close, let herself feel too much. And the worst part was that she couldn't even blame Minho. He'd done nothing wrong. The problem was entirely in her own traitorous heart. The next morning, Yuna returned. Zuri watched from the foyer as Minho lifted his wife into his arms the moment she cleared the doorway, burying his face in her neck. Yuna laughed and wrapped her legs around his waist, kissing him like she'd been gone for months instead of a week. I missed you, Yuna said against his lips. So much. Never again, Minho growled. You're never leaving for that long again. I was only gone 7 days. 7 days too many. They disappeared into their bedroom and didn't emerge for hours. When they finally appeared for dinner, Yuna was glowing, and Minho looked more relaxed than Zuri had seen him in a week. The natural order had been restored. Zuri told herself she was relieved. That the strange tension from last night had been an aberration, a moment of weakness that would never be repeated. Minho was devoted to Yuna. But a week later, everything shifted again. Zuri was collecting laundry from the master suite, a task she'd resumed now that Yuna was back and security concerns had settled slightly. The couple was supposed to be out at a business dinner. The house should have been quiet. But as she approached their bedroom, she heard sounds. Intimate sounds. They'd come home early, and Zuri had walked straight into a moment she had no business witnessing. She should have left immediately. Should have backed away silently. But she was frozen, her hands clutching the laundry basket, her feet refusing to move. Through the cracked door, she could see them on the bed. Yuna's back arched, Minho's hands on her body, his voice, rough and desperate. Tell me you're mine. Say it. I'm yours, Yuna gasped. Only yours. Always. Again. Yours, Minho. All of me. Forever. The raw possessiveness in his voice, the complete surrender in hers, it was overwhelming and beautiful, and Zuri felt her face flush with heat that had nothing to do with embarrassment. She finally found the strength to move, backing away as quietly as possible. But not before she heard Minho's next words. I'd kill anyone who tried to take you from me. Burn the world down. Nothing matters except you. And Yuna's breathless response. I know. That's why I'm not afraid of anything anymore. Back in her room, Zuri pressed her hands to her burning face. This was getting out of control. She couldn't keep witnessing these intimate moments, couldn't keep feeling this pull towards something that didn't belong to her. She needed boundaries. Distance. Something to protect herself from the dangerous feelings growing in her chest. But the universe had other plans. 2 days later, a new threat emerged that would test every boundary Zuri had tried to establish. She was with Yuna at an art gallery opening in Hongdae, security surrounding them as usual. Yuna was in her element, discussing technique with other artists, her face animated and beautiful. Zuri stood nearby, scanning the crowd, when she noticed a man watching them too intently. He was Korean, probably in his 40s, well-dressed and unremarkable except for the cold calculation in his eyes. He wasn't looking at Yuna like an art enthusiast. He was studying her like prey. Zuri moved closer to Yuna, her hand going to her phone. But before she could call security, the man approached. Mrs. Kong, he said in polite Korean. Your husband's reputation precedes you both. Such a beautiful couple. Yuna's smile was polite but cautious. Thank you. I'm sorry, have we met? No, but I know Minho quite well. We're business associates. His smile didn't reach his eyes. I've been hoping to discuss a matter with him, but he's been difficult to reach lately. My husband is very busy. Of course, running an empire takes time. The man's gaze slid to Zuri, then back to Yuna. Perhaps you could pass along a message? Tell him that certain agreements need to be honored. That family debts can't be ignored forever. The threat was barely veiled. Yuna's face went pale, but she maintained her composure. I'll let him know you'd like to speak with him. Please do. I'd hate for misunderstandings to lead to unfortunate consequences. He walked away, and Zuri immediately called Minho's security team. Within minutes, they were escorting Yuna and Zuri out a back entrance. Minho called Zuri's phone directly. What happened? His voice was ice. Zuri explained while they drove back to the estate. By the time they arrived, Minho was pacing the foyer like a caged animal. He pulled Yuna into his arms the moment she stepped through the door, checking her over frantically. "I'm fine," Yuna assured him. "He just talked to me. That's all." "That's enough." Minho's face was murderous. "He approached you. Threatened you. In public." "Minho, please."
No.
He released her to pace again. "This ends now. I've been patient. I've tried to negotiate. But if they're going after you, all bets are off." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done months ago." He turned to his security chief. "Set up a meeting. Tonight. I don't care who has to be woken up or threatened to make it happen. We're settling this permanently."
Yuna grabbed his arm.
"Please don't do anything reckless." "Reckless would be letting anyone who threatens you continue breathing." He cupped her face. "You're everything. Everything. I won't risk you." "Then don't risk yourself either. I need you alive." "I'll come back to you. I always do." But this time felt different. The tension in Minho's shoulders. The way he kissed Yuna goodbye like it might be the last time. The carefully neutral expression he wore as he left the estate with 6 armed men. Yuna and Zuri sat together in the conservatory, waiting. Hours passed. Midnight came and went. Yuna tried to paint, but her hands shook too badly. Zuri made tea that went cold and untouched. "Tell me about Kenya," Yuna said suddenly, needing distraction. "What was it like growing up there?" Zuri talked about her childhood, about the red earth and endless skies, about her mother's strength and her father's absence, about leaving home with such hope and ending up cleaning houses illegally in a foreign country, about how strange fate was, how she'd ended up here in this mansion, part of a love story that wasn't hers but had somehow changed her completely. "I'm glad you're here," Yuna said quietly. "I know this wasn't what you planned, but I'm selfish enough to be grateful anyway." "I'm glad too." At 3 in the morning, Minho finally returned. He was covered in blood again. Not his own, Zuri suspected, and his expression was grim. But he was alive. Yuna ran to him, not caring about the blood. "It's done? It's done. The threat is neutralized." "You're sure?" "Very sure." His hands were shaking as he held her. "No one will touch you again. I made sure of it." Zuri didn't ask what that meant. Didn't want to know the details of what Minho had done to protect his wife. She just felt relief that he'd come home, that the immediate danger had passed. But that night, lying in bed, Zuri realized something that made her chest ache. She hadn't just been worried about Yuna. She'd been terrified for Minho too. Terrified that he wouldn't come back, that she'd never hear his voice again, never see the way his face softened when he looked at his wife. She was in too deep. Emotionally entangled with both of them in ways that went beyond friendship or duty. She cared about their happiness with an intensity that scared her. And some small, secret part of her wished she could be part of what they had instead of just witnessing it from the outside. The guilt of that thought kept her awake until dawn. The next 2 weeks were unusually peaceful. Minho stayed close to home, conducting business from his office. Yuna worked on her paintings in the conservatory. Zuri fell back into routine, trying to ignore the complicated feelings churning in her chest. But she'd underestimated how perceptive Yuna was. One afternoon, while Minho was in a meeting, Yuna cornered Zuri in the library. "We need to talk," Yuna said, her expression serious. Zuri's heart dropped.
About what? About you.
"About whatever's going on in that head of yours." "I don't know what you mean." "Zuri." Yuna's voice was gentle but firm. "I see the way you look at us sometimes. The way you go quiet when Minho and I are together. The way you've been pulling away lately." Panic clawed at Zuri's throat. "I haven't. It's okay." Yuna sat beside her, taking her hand. "I'm not angry. I'm concerned. You've become important to both of us. Minho trusts you completely. And she paused. "I love you like a sister. So, if something's wrong, I want to help." Zuri felt tears burning. "Nothing's wrong. Don't lie to me, please." The kindness in Yuna's voice broke something in Zuri. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." For what? For Zuri couldn't say it, couldn't admit the truth. For not being more professional, for getting too close, for caring too much. Yuna studied her for a long moment. You've seen us at our most intimate, haven't you? More than once. Zuri's face burned. I never meant to. I tried to give you privacy, but sometimes I'd hear, or I'd walk in accidentally. And it affected you. Yes. The admission came out as a broken whisper. Yuna was quiet for a moment. I need you to understand something, Zuri. What Minho and I have, it's rare. Maybe even impossible. We found each other against all odds, and our love has survived things that should have destroyed it. But that doesn't make it perfect. It doesn't make us perfect. You seem perfect to me. We're not. We're just two broken people who found a way to be whole together. Yuna squeezed her hand. And if witnessing that has made you want something similar for yourself, that's not wrong. That's human. But Zuri stopped, unable to continue. You what? I envy you. The words came out raw and honest. I envy what you have with him. The way he looks at you. The way he'd destroy the world for you. I've never experienced anything like that. Never even believed it existed until I saw you two together. Yuna pulled Zuri into a hug. You'll find it. Someone will look at you the way Minho looks at me. Someone will love you with that same intensity. But Zuri wasn't sure she wanted someone like Minho. The terrible truth, the one she couldn't voice, was that watching them together had made her want them. Both of them. Their love, their intimacy, their world. She wanted to be part of what they had instead of just witnessing it from the outside. It was wrong and impossible and completely inappropriate. But it was true. That night, Zuri made a decision. She would ask for a transfer to different duties, something that kept her away from the couple's intimate moments. She'd maintain her security role but create distance. It was the only way to protect herself, and them, from her increasingly complicated feelings. But before she could implement her plan, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at dawn. Zuri was still in bed when she heard shouting from the master suite, then running footsteps. She threw on her robe and rushed into the hallway to find Minho barking orders into his phone, his face carved from ice and fury. Yuna stood beside him in her nightgown, pale and trembling. What happened? Zuri asked, fear spiking through her chest. My sister, Yuna said, her voice breaking. She's been taken. Someone grabbed her outside her apartment in California last night. Minho ended his call and immediately made another, switching between Korean and English as he mobilized his entire network. I want every contact we have in California activated. Find her.
Now.
Who took her?
Zuri asked.
Rivals. They're using her as leverage. Minho's jaw clenched. They want me to give up territory, resources, pay ransom. They think they can use my wife's sister to control me. What are you going to do? Get her back. His eyes were dead cold. And make sure everyone involved regrets being born. Yuna grabbed his arm. Minho, please. I'm handling this. You stay here where it's safe. That's my sister. I can't just sit here and... You can and you will. He cupped her face, and the contrast between his icy exterior and the tenderness in that gesture made Zuri's chest ache. I can't function if I'm worried about you two. Please, Yuna. Trust me. I'll bring her home. Tears streamed down Yuna's face, but she nodded. Promise me you'll come back too. Always. He kissed her desperately, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her mouth. I love you. More than anything. I love you too. Be careful. Minho left within the hour, taking half his security team with him. The house felt emptier and more dangerous, without his presence. Yuna was devastated, pacing the conservatory like a caged animal, unable to paint or eat or think about anything except her sister's safety. Zuri stayed close, offering what comfort she could. But inside, she was terrified too. Not just for Yuna's sister, but for Minho. She'd seen the look in his eyes when he'd left, the look of a man preparing for war. He would get Yuna's sister back, but the cost might be his own life. The next 36 hours were torture. Minho called every few hours with updates, but he shared few details. Yuna barely slept, existing in a state of constant anxiety. Zuri made tea, brought food that went uneaten, and tried not to let her own fear show. Late on the second night, Yuna finally broke down completely. She'd been holding herself together through sheer will, but exhaustion and terror finally overwhelmed her defenses. She collapsed on the conservatory floor, sobbing so hard she could barely breathe. Zuri wrapped her arms around her friend, holding her while she fell apart. She's going to be okay. Min-ho will find her. What if he doesn't? What if they hurt her? What if? Yuna's voice cracked. What if I lose them both? My sister and my husband. You won't. Min-ho is too strong, too smart. He'll bring them both home. You don't know that. No, Zuri didn't. But she had to believe it. Had to trust that the man who loved Yuna with such devastating intensity would move heaven and earth to keep his promise. They stayed on the floor together for hours, Yuna's head on Zuri's shoulder, both of them waiting for news that felt like it would never come. At 4 a.m, Zuri's phone rang. Min-ho. We have her, he said without preamble. She's safe. Shaken up but unharmed. We're heading to the airport now. Relief hit Zuri so hard she nearly dropped the phone. Thank God. Yuna, he found her. She's safe. Yuna grabbed the phone. Min-ho? Is she really okay? Zuri couldn't hear his response, but she saw Yuna's face crumble with relief. Thank you, Yuna sobbed. Thank you. I love you so much. When will you be home? More conversation. Then Yuna's expression shifted to concern. You're hurt? How badly? Min-ho, tell me the truth. Zuri's stomach dropped. He was injured. I don't care if it's just a scratch, Yuna said fiercely. You get on that plane and come home to me.
Right now.
I need to see you. Her voice broke. I need to see with my own eyes that you're okay. She hung up and immediately dissolved into tears again, but this time they were relief mixed with residual fear. He took a bullet, she told Zuri. Grazed his side. He says it's nothing serious, but he's coming home. That's what matters. I can't lose him, Zuri. I can't. He's everything. Zuri held her friend while she cried and felt her own eyes burning with tears. She'd been so afraid too. More afraid than she had any right to be. Because somewhere along the way, Min-ho had become important to her too, not just as her employer or even Yuna's husband, but as someone she couldn't imagine the world without. It was a dangerous realization, one that made everything more complicated. Min-ho, Yuna's sister Rachel, and the security team arrived home the following afternoon. Yuna ran to her sister first, pulling her into a fierce embrace. Rachel was physically unharmed but clearly traumatized, clinging to Yuna and crying. But Zuri's eyes went to Min-ho. He looked terrible, exhausted, pale, his shirt stained with blood. He was favoring his left side, and Zuri could see the careful way he moved, like every breath hurt. The moment Yuna assured herself that Rachel was truly okay, she turned to her husband. You're bleeding through your bandages. It's fine. It's not fine. Upstairs.
Now.
I'm changing those bandages, and you're going to rest whether you like it or not. Min-ho didn't argue, which told Zuri exactly how much pain he was in. Yuna helped him up the stairs, and Rachel turned to Zuri with exhausted eyes. You must be Zuri. Yuna's told me about you. I'm so glad you're safe. Thanks to him. Rachel looked toward the stairs where her brother-in-law had disappeared. I've never seen anything like it.
He was terrifying.
The things he did to the men who took me, she shuddered. But he was gentle with me. Made sure I was never in danger during the rescue. He risked his life for me. He'd do anything for Yuna. That includes protecting her family. She's lucky. They both are. Zuri got Rachel settled in a guest room, then went to check on the couple. She knocked softly on the master suite door. Come in, Yuna called. Inside, Min-ho was sitting shirtless on the bed while Yuna carefully cleaned and rebandaged the wound on his side. It was a deep graze, angry and red but not life-threatening. Still, seeing it made Zuri's chest tighten. How bad is it?
Zuri asked.
Bad enough that he needs rest and proper medical attention, Yuna said pointedly. But he's being stubborn. I'm fine. You took a bullet for my sister. I'd take 100 bullets if it meant keeping her safe. Keeping you from that kind of pain. Min-ho caught Yuna's hand. Worth it. Yuna's eyes filled with tears. You could have died. But I didn't. I came home to you, just like I promised. They kissed, tender and desperate, and Zuri felt like an intruder again. But she also felt something else, a fierce protectiveness toward both of them. They'd been through so much, survived so much. They deserved peace. Over the next week, Rachel stayed at the estate while she recovered from her ordeal. Zuri spent time with her, hearing stories about Yuna's childhood, about the sisters' bond. Rachel was kind and funny, and it was clear she adored her sister and respected Minho despite finding him intimidating. "I don't understand how Yuna does it," Rachel said one afternoon while they sat in the conservatory. "Loving someone's so dangerous. Always knowing that something could happen to him, that enemies might use her against him. She does it because the alternative, not loving him, would be worse." Rachel studied Zuri carefully. "You understand them. Really understand them. I've been watching their relationship for months. It's hard not to understand when you see how they are together. Yuna says you're more than just security, that you're her closest friend here. She's been very kind to me. She trusts you completely. So does Minho, which is huge. He doesn't trust anyone." Rachel paused. "Can I ask you something personal?" Zuri tensed. "Okay. Do you ever wish you had what they have? That kind of intense, all-consuming love." The question hit too close to home. Everyone wants to be loved like that. "That's not what I asked." Zuri met Rachel's knowing eyes and felt exposed. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "I wish I had something even close to what they share." "You will. Someone will see the way Minho sees Yuna. Someone will love you that fiercely." But Zuri wasn't sure she could accept that kind of love from anyone else now. She'd seen the real thing, had witnessed its power and beauty. Anything less would feel like settling. The day before Rachel was scheduled to return to California, something happened that changed everything again. Zuri was in her room, reading before bed, when she heard sounds from the master suite. At first, she thought it was another intimate moment and prepared to ignore it. But then she heard something that made her blood run cold. Minho crying out in pain. She was at their door in seconds, knocking urgently. "Yuna? Is everything okay?" "Zuri, come in. I need help." Inside, Minho was on the bed, his face gray with pain, his side bleeding through fresh bandages. Yuna was trying to apply pressure, but her hands were shaking. His wound reopened. Yuna said, her voice high with panic. "He won't let me call a doctor. He says it's too risky, that he doesn't trust anyone right now." "But Zuri, there's so much blood." Zuri's nursing school training, the 2 years before she'd switched to international relations, kicked in immediately. "Get me clean towels, antiseptic, and the medical kit from the bathroom. Now." She moved to the bed, assessing the damage. The wound had torn open, probably from Minho overexerting himself despite being ordered to rest. It needed stitches, but Zuri could handle that if she had the right supplies. Yuna returned with everything. Zuri worked quickly, cleaning the wound, numbing the area with local anesthetic from the medical kit. "This is going to hurt," she warned Minho. "Just do it." His jaw was clenched, his entire body rigid with pain. Zuri stitched him up with steady hands, her mind completely focused on the task. She'd done this before, in her brief time in nursing school, but never on someone she knew. Never on someone whose life mattered to her this much. When she finished, she bandaged him carefully and helped Yuna get him comfortable. "No moving for at least 3 days, Zuri ordered. "No business meetings. No leaving this bed except for the bathroom. If these stitches tear again, you could bleed out." "Understood," Minho said quietly. He looked at her with something like respect. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just follow orders for once." After Zuri left, she heard Yuna's voice through the door. "She saved you. Again. First by warning you about the intruder, now this." "I know. We owe her everything, Minho." "I know that too." Zuri leaned against the wall outside their room, her hands still shaking from adrenaline. She'd been so afraid, so terrified that he might die right there in front of her. The intensity of that fear had been overwhelming, undeniable. She was in love with him, not just attracted or fascinated or envious, actually in love with a man who belonged completely to someone else. A man who would never look at her the way he looked at his wife. A man who would never want her the way she'd begun to want him. It was hopeless and painful and wrong. And Zuri didn't know what to do about it. The next few days were difficult for everyone. Minho was a terrible patient, constantly trying to work from bed despite Yuna's threats. Rachel stayed an extra week to help, and the three women formed a united front in forcing Minho to actually rest. But Zuri noticed something changing. The way Minho looked at her sometimes, with gratitude, yes, but also something else. Curiosity, maybe. Like he was seeing her as more than just staff or even a friend. Like he was wondering about her in ways that made Zuri's stomach flip. And Yuna noticed too. She started watching the two of them with an expression Zuri couldn't quite read. Not jealousy. Yuna had no reason to be jealous, but something thoughtful and assessing. One night, after Rachel had finally returned to California and Minho was sleeping, Yuna knocked on Zuri's door. "Can we talk?" They sat on Zuri's bed, the room quiet and intimate. Yuna looked nervous, which was unusual. "I need to tell you something," Yuna said. "And I need you to listen without judging."
Can you do that?
"Of course." Yuna took a deep breath. "Minho and I have been talking.
About you.
About how important you've become to both of us. About how much we trust you." Zuri's heart started racing. "Okay. We've been together for 5 years. Married for 3. And our relationship is solid. Stronger than anything I've ever known. But there's something we've been exploring lately. A possibility we never considered before. Yuna, I don't understand. We want to share our life with you. Completely." The words hung in the air, impossible and earth-shattering.
What?
Zuri's voice came out as a whisper. "I know how you feel about him. About us. I see the way you look at Minho when you think no one's watching. The way you react when we're together." Yuna took Zuri's hand. "And I'm not angry. I'm not hurt. Because I understand. Minho he's everything. And what we have together is intoxicating. I don't blame you for wanting to be part of it." "Yuna, I would never." "I know you wouldn't. You're too honorable to act on it. But what if you didn't have to deny it? What if there was a way for all 3 of us to be happy?" Zuri's mind was spinning. "You're saying..." "I'm saying that Minho and I have discussed this extensively. We've talked about how we both care about you. How we both want you in our lives permanently. How we both feel something for you that goes beyond friendship." Yuna's eyes were earnest, vulnerable. "We want you to join our relationship. To be with us. Both of us." "That's insane." "Maybe. But so is everything about our lives. So is falling in love with a crime lord. So is surviving multiple attempts on our lives and coming out stronger. We don't do conventional, Zuri. We do what feels right." "What does Minho think about this?" "He's the one who suggested it first. Said he'd noticed the way you looked at him and that he'd started seeing you differently too. That he cared about you. Trusted you. Wanted you in ways he'd never wanted anyone except me." Yuna's voice softened. "I could have been jealous.
Should have been.
But instead, I realized I felt the same way. You've become essential to both of us." Zuri stood up, pacing. "I can't, this is too much. I need to think." "Take all the time you need." "But Zuri..." Yuna stood too. "Don't say no because you think it's wrong. Say no because you genuinely don't want this. Because if there's any part of you that wants to be with us, we'll make it work. We'll protect you. Love you. Make you part of our world permanently." After Yuna left, Zuri sat in her room for hours, her mind reeling. This was insane. Inappropriate. Impossible. But it was also everything she'd secretly wanted since the first night she'd heard Minho beg his wife for closeness. To be part of their intensity, their devotion, their world. To be loved by both of them with that same fierce protectiveness. Could she really have this? Could she accept something so unconventional? The next morning, Zuri found Minho in his office. He was out of bed for the first time in days, looking stronger but still careful with his movements. When he saw her, his expression shifted to something vulnerable. "Yuna told you." "Yes." And Zuri closed the door behind her, her heart hammering. "Tell me the truth. Is this really what you want? Or are you just going along with what Yuna wants?" "It's what I want." He stood, moving closer. "I didn't realize it at first. Thought I was just grateful for everything you'd done for us. But then I noticed myself looking for you, wanting to hear your voice. Feeling calmer when you were close. And when you stitched me up the other night, taking care of me with those steady hands," he paused. I realized I'd started needing you the way I need Yuna. Not as much, not yet, but getting there. This is crazy. Everything about my life is crazy, but it works. Yuna and I work, and I think the three of us could work too. He reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. The first time he'd ever touched her like this. I want you, Zuri. In my life. In my home. In my bed. I want to protect you. Care for you. Watch you become everything you're capable of being. Zuri's breath caught. And Yuna really. She wants this as much as I do. Maybe more. She loves you. Differently than she loves me. But just as real. I don't know how this would work. We'd figure it out together. Make our own rules. The three of us against the world. His thumb stroked her cheek. But I need to know if you want this. If you want us.
Did she?
Could she accept this impossible offer? Zuri thought about the past months. About watching them love each other with such intensity. About the way her heart had started racing at the sound of Minho's voice. About how safe she felt with Yuna. About the family they'd become without her realizing it. Yes, she whispered. I want this. I want both of you. Minho's smile was devastating. He pulled her close, and for the first time, Zuri let herself relax into his arms. Let herself feel the warmth of his body, the strength of his embrace. Let herself want him without guilt. Thank you, he murmured against her hair, for trusting us, for choosing us. That night, the three of them sat together in the conservatory, talking for hours about how this would work. Boundaries, expectations, feelings. It was awkward and vulnerable and beautiful. I'm still figuring out what I feel, Zuri admitted. For both of you, it's all so new. That's okay, Yuna said, taking her hand. We'll go at your pace. There's no rush. And you're sure, both of you, that this won't destroy what you have together? Minho and Yuna exchanged a look, one of those silent communications that couples develop over years together. Nothing could destroy what we have, Minho said. Our relationship is unshakable. This isn't about replacing or diminishing that. It's about expanding, making room for someone else we both care about. We've been talking about this for weeks, Yuna added, exploring every angle, testing our feelings. And we're both certain, this feels right. Slowly, carefully, they built something new together. Zuri moved into a room connected to the master suite, her own space, but close to theirs. They spent evenings together, the three of them, talking and laughing and slowly learning each other in new ways. The physical intimacy came gradually, first with Yuna, who was patient and gentle, teaching Zuri what it meant to be touched with reverence. Then with Minho, who was careful not to overwhelm her, taking his time to learn what she liked. And finally, with both of them together, in a moment of vulnerability and trust that shattered every wall Zuri had built around her heart. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of jealousy, of insecurity, of wondering if she really belonged. But Minho and Yuna were patient, working through every concern, making sure Zuri felt valued and wanted. And slowly, Zuri fell completely. Not just for one of them, but for both. For the way Yuna made her laugh. For the way Minho protected her as fiercely as he protected his wife. For the family they were creating together. 6 months after joining their relationship officially, Zuri stood in the conservatory, painting beside Yuna while Minho worked at a nearby desk. It was a quiet morning, peaceful and domestic. I have news, Minho said, looking up from his laptop. Both women turned to him. The last of my rivals have been neutralized. The organization is stable. The threats are gone. He smiled, something rare and genuine. We're safe. Finally, truly safe. Yuna ran to him, kissing him with joy and relief. Zuri followed, and Minho pulled her in two, holding both women close. I need to ask you both something, Minho said, his voice serious. He released them to pull out 2 small boxes. I know we've already committed to each other, but I want to make it official, permanent. He opened the boxes to reveal 2 rings, identical bands with 3 intertwined stones. Marry me, both of you. Not legally, maybe, but in every way that matters. Be my family, my partners, my loves, forever. Yuna was already crying, nodding frantically.
Yes.
God, yes. Minho turned to Zuri, his eyes vulnerable. Zuri, will you? Zuri thought about the girl who'd arrived at this estate months ago, desperate, alone, invisible. She thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd changed, how this impossible love had transformed her. Yes, she said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, I'll marry you. Both of you. They celebrated that night, the three of them together, bodies and hearts intertwined. It was passionate and tender, overwhelming and perfect. And for the first time in her life, Zuri felt completely whole. 3 months later, they had a private ceremony in the conservatory. Just the three of them and a handful of trusted witnesses. It wasn't legally binding. Korean law didn't recognize plural marriages. But it was real, in every way that mattered. Zuri wore white, standing between Minho and Yuna, exchanging vows that promised devotion, protection, and eternal love. Minho slid rings onto both their fingers, his eyes wet with emotion. Yuna kissed them both, her joy absolutely radiant. They became a family officially that day. 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something beautiful from chaos. And 6 months after that, Zuri discovered she was pregnant. The news came during a routine doctor's visit. She'd been feeling tired, nauseous, emotional. The doctor confirmed what part of her had suspected. She was carrying Minho's child. Zuri stood in the bathroom of the medical clinic, staring at the test results, her hands shaking. A baby. She was going to have a baby. Their baby. She drove home in a daze, her mind spinning. How would Minho react? How would Yuna feel about this? Would it change everything between them? But when she arrived at the estate and told them the news, their reactions dissolved every fear. Yuna screamed with joy, pulling Zuri into a fierce embrace. We're going to be parents. All 3 of us. Minho just stared at Zuri for a long moment, his eyes filling with tears. Then he crossed to her, cupping her face with such tenderness it made her cry. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for giving us this gift. Are you happy? Happy doesn't begin to cover it. He kissed her gently. You're carrying my child. Our child. You've made our family complete. The pregnancy transformed everything. Minho became even more protective, which Zuri hadn't thought possible. He insisted she stop any work that might be strenuous, hired the best prenatal care, and rearranged his schedule to be home more often. Yuna was constantly hovering, bringing food and water, making sure Zuri was comfortable. And at night, the 3 of them would lie together, Minho's hand on Zuri's growing belly, Yuna's head on her shoulder, all of them imagining the life they were creating. What should we name her? Yuna asked one evening. How do you know it's a girl?
Zuri laughed.
I just do. What about Amara? It means grace in Arabic, eternal in Sanskrit. It's perfect, Minho agreed.
Amara.
Our grace. Our eternity. The labor came on a rainy night in October, 8 months after their private wedding ceremony. Minho drove them to the hospital with Yuna holding Zuri's hand in the back seat, both of them coaching her through contractions. The birth was long and difficult, but when Amara finally arrived, screaming and perfect and absolutely beautiful, everything else faded away. Zuri held her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Minho stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his eyes wet. Yuna cried openly, kissing Zuri's forehead and stroking the baby's tiny hand. She's perfect, Yuna whispered. Absolutely perfect. She has your eyes, Zuri told Minho. And your strength, he replied. Look how fiercely she's holding Yuna's finger. They stayed like that for hours, the 3 of them surrounding the newest member of their family. Hospital staff gave them strange looks. 3 parents was unconventional even in modern Seoul. But none of them cared. This was their family, their love, their choice. 2 years later, their household had grown even more. Yuna was pregnant now, carrying twins that Minho had joked were his body's attempt to keep up with the chaos. Amara was a bright, energetic toddler who called both women mama and kept them all on their toes. The estate had transformed into a real home. Amara's toys scattered across once pristine floors. Children's laughter echoing through halls that had known too much violence. Love-filling spaces that had been built for power and fear. Zuri painted beside Yuna in the conservatory while Minho worked nearby, Amara playing at their feet. It was a quiet afternoon, peaceful and domestic, everything Zuri had never known she wanted. Happy? Minho asked, looking up from his laptop. Zuri smiled. More than I knew was possible. Good. He came over, kissing her temple, then Yuna's, then kneeling to kiss Amara's curly hair. Because this is everything to me. All of you. That night, after Amara was asleep and Yuna had gone to bed early due to pregnancy exhaustion, Zuri found Minho standing at the windows of their shared bedroom, looking out at the estate grounds. Penny for your thoughts? She asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. Just thinking about how different my life is now. How different I am. He turned to face her, his hands settling on her waist. 5 years ago, I was just existing. Going through the motions. Running my empire but feeling nothing. Empty. And now I have everything. A wife I'd die for. A partner I never expected but can't imagine living without. A daughter who looks at me like I hung the moon. Twins on the way.
His eyes softened.
You changed my life, Zuri. Both of you did. Made me human again. You made me believe in love, Zuri replied. Real, complicated, impossible love. The kind I'd given up on. He kissed her then, slow and deep, full of promise and devotion. I love you. Not as much as I love Yuna, I won't lie about that. What she and I have is something I can never replicate. But I love you in your own way. Completely. Eternally. I know. And I love you both. Differently, but equally real. They stood in the moonlight, holding each other, while their daughter slept down the hall and Yuna dreamed in their bed. It wasn't a conventional family. It wasn't what any of them had planned. But it was theirs. Built from danger and devotion, from impossible choices and unwavering trust. 3 people who'd found each other against all odds and created something beautiful from the darkness. And as Zuri rested her head against Minho's chest, listening to his heartbeat, she thought about that first night. The night she'd stood frozen outside their bedroom door, hearing him beg his wife for closeness, feeling something crack open inside her chest. She'd witnessed their love and wanted it for herself. And somehow, impossibly, she'd gotten it. Not by taking anything from them, but by being invited to share in their world. By becoming part of something bigger than she'd ever imagined. The maid who'd listen outside their door had become part of the story. And the story was still being written, one day of love and protection and fierce devotion at a time. Years later, when Amara asked how Zuri and her parents had met, they told her an edited version. About how Zuri had been hired to help take care of the house. About how she'd become important to the family. About how love sometimes happens in unexpected ways. But the truth, the real truth, was stranger and more beautiful than any story they could tell. It was about a man who'd begged his wife for intimacy, unaware that a maid was listening. About a woman who'd witnessed a love so powerful it had cracked open her own heart. About 3 people who'd built a family from impossible circumstances and refused to apologize for the unconventional beauty of what they'd created. It was their story, messy and complicated and